The time has expired. The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Speaker, the Labor Party will support this legislation. I want to make that very clear, given that the originator of this legislation back when we were in power was our then Commerce Minister Leanne Dalzell, who put this in place. And Mr Banks's predecessor, Mr Hyde, came to this Parliament, gave a very similar speech actually to Mr Banks, that this was going to be an earth-shattering reform, and we support the concept of this bill. It is a good process and good concept. What we're going to highlight tonight is some of the absurdities. You'd think that this was going to change the constitutional and business framework of this country the way Mr Banks trumpeted it. But we'll get to some of the sort of, really what it is lightweight content in a heavyweight process. Lightweight content in Parliament, and Mr Banks said this is his first salvo as the small business minister. Small business men and women on their so-called, to quote him, crystal sets will be hanging on every word tonight, I'm sure, as they read through the 31 acts that are going to be repealed, which are a spent force. Now, I went and asked the clerk, because I am not a lawyer, I went and asked the clerk, I said, am I right? Said the clerk, does a spent act means basically it's been dealt with, it doesn't exist, it has no compliant cost, no impact on anybody except Mr Banks and his sort of internal emotions? Yep. And the answer is yes. Yes, it's basically like an act that's been repealed. So one of the great the first great contribution that Mr Banks, as he came out of the political crypt and into this Parliament, has been to repeal 31 acts that have no effect, no compliance cost on any small business and anyone. Well, I say, sir, I should move we have a minute's silence in respect of Mr Banks's great contribution, sir. The man who came to this House, who in his speech, sir, talked about getting the hands out of the pockets of small business people, getting off their backs, stopping this grotesque spending and compliance costs. I too am an ex-small business person. Can I say this? That this from the biggest spender, other than Bill English, in the Parliament, whose last claim to fame as Mayor of Auckland before they booted him was to treble the debt that Auckland City had with his spending, not including the debt that the new super city took on. That was Mr Banks' hey, big spender. So I just say to Mr Banks, congratulations, what a great contribution to the Parliament to bring a really good bill, a good process in this regulatory, it was called the Regulatory Improvement Bill, and then Rodney Hyde made an equally staggering, substantive contribution to this Parliament by changing its name from the Regulatory Improvement Bill to the Regulatory Reform Bill. Now, I know every small business person around the country that Mr Banks represents getting his hands out of their pockets and putting his hand around the back into their back pocket and grabbing their wallet, of course, will be thanking that Mr Banks from the bottom of his heart for changing that one word from improvement to reform. How much compliance cost will that save a small business? I imagine millions of dollars, sir. Millions of dollars. Although I would have thought they might have to change the wording on some of the forms. But the great contribution, the first kick-off contribution from the big spender from Auckland is to repeal 31 spent acts that have no compliance because they don't have any effect on anyone or anybody or any business in New Zealand. I say, sir, this man deserves a knighthood. What a great contribution. He has made history. He has made history in this place. The dinosaurs come back. It's Jurassic Park all over again. And he has made history in this place, repealing 31 acts that have no effect on anybody. Actually, this could be yes Prime Minister or yes Minister all over again. Obviously, he's read all the briefing papers the officials have put in front of him. The officials have convinced him, Minister, this is your big day. This is your big hit. This is your penultimate hit. You've just been appointed Small Business Minister. You can kick a goal for the people of New Zealand and small business by repealing 31 acts that have no effect on anyone or any small business. I just say this. As we're trying to reduce slash and burn compliance costs through this bill, I wonder if Mr Banks has gone to his small business folk and said the amount of parliamentary time we're going to take to repeal, and money, your money, small business people, because you're taxpayers, we're going to take repealing 31 acts, spent acts, that don't have an effect or a cost on anyone. That's a compliance cost, Mr Banks, that every SME, that member, sir, that minister represents, is going to pay. And I invite the minister, given the detailed and substantive minister that he is, to maybe go and cost the amount of time wasting that minister spent bringing this amount of piffle, lightweight piffle, apart from, I will say, some decent provisions in here in respect to credit unions. And there are one or two provisions that I will say, like the amendment to the Companies Act, which Mr Hyde himself said would save New Zealand companies, which most of them tend not to be SMEs by the strictest definition, but I'm sure Mr Banks knows that. Mr Hyde said that would save $1.5 million. Well, $1.5 million is a lot of dough, I accept that. But when you spread that over the thousands of SMEs, and you sort of, SMEs people are pretty practical folk. They sort of try and work out dollars and cents. They're not into sort of fluff. They want to work out how much will this save me. I reckon if you spread $1.5 million in cost savings over every SME in the country, wouldn't come to a hell of a lot. Because this, of course, deals with voting and proxies, and the particular provision here, of course, deals with whether you can use electronic shareholder participation. Well, I don't know how many 1- and 2-person plumbing firms and, the odd carpenter, the odd electrician might have 3 or 4 people working for him, a couple of young apprentices, are going to sit there tonight and say, hell's teeth, what a wonderful provision. I can now choose to lodge my documentation as a shareholder and participate electronically. Brilliant. Awe-inspiring. Genius, I say, sir. I think this is a moment we should cherish. Then, of course, we have another provision, which I think is a good one, the amendment to the Films, Videos and Publication Classification Act of '93 to modernise labelling. Now, I concede, for those in that trade, and I offer this as an olive branch to the senior, the old codger over there, the old minister, the old tumbleweed, that Mr Hyde said would save $2.4 million in its first year, going up to $3.1 million in year 5. And I don't know how many video firms there are in the country, sir, but that will be of some assistance, I grant you, to that. Likewise, the issues that the Minister outlined around friendly societies and credit unions. So I say the process that we as a government, the former government, brought in, this is a good process and a good legislative framework. It is something we should do. But let's not get too carried away. This was trumpeted by Mr Banks and his predecessor, old Rumpelstiltskin, who's now sort of floating around Auckland, Mr Hyde, as he was going to slash through red tape, slash through compliance costs. This is what he was going to do. And he sent Uncle Fester in as the night watchman from Epsom, Mr Banks. And Mr Banks equally gets up and says he's going to slash through red tape, slash through compliance costs, assist these SMEs. Millions of dollars will flow back into the pockets of these SMEs through Mr Banks' good works in slashing compliance costs. And then, sir, we pick the bill up. It's got a bit of weight to it, I suppose. There's a few pages in it. We pick the bills up, and what do we find? Yet again, mutton dressed up as mutton. That's what it is. Mutton dressed up as mutton. I wasn't referring to the minister, sir. I would have said pork, but I wasn't referring to him, sir. I was speaking in respect of the legislation. And then what do we find, sir? We find the big hit, the big moment in the sun, and I'm going to go out to all my SMEs in Canterbury. Ms Dalzell will, and she'll say, look, this minister is akin to Mother Teresa in sort of political terms. Do you know what he's done? He has repealed 31 acts which basically have no effect on him. And I'm sure they will carry Mr Banks through the streets of Canterbury and Epsom and Auckland, showering him in rose petals, laurel leaves aloft, in sort of Romanesque-like proportions, celebrating what a great champion of SMEs this great man is. And then they might also ask why it was that he trebled the debt in the Auckland City Council in 3 years. That's an achievement. That's an achievement that will have more impact on SMEs, I wager, sir, than anything in this act, anything in this piece of legislation that we pass. So I say to Mr Banks, he stepped forward with the old cricket bat, tried to slug one over the boundary for 6 runs and got caught in the slips behind. Not a good effort, not a good start, not a bad rousing speech. But I say to Mr Banks, the one thing you've got to remember, and maybe you've been away from the SME movement too long and you've had your nose in the trough of local government for too long, let's just think of this. SMEs, Minister, through you, sir, are not stupid. They know and they can smell bull when they see it, and this is seriously high-quality bull, sir.
I call Todd McClay.
It is one start. Can I say it's a pleasure to rise and speak to the regularly reformed